What's up? We're gonna go ahead and get started here with Ben. Here's Ben.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Here to talk about the axis today. Do we have people in, or should we wait a little bit?
We've got some people here.
Got some people?
Yeah.
Cool.
What's up, everyone?
So, welcome. We're gonna do just kind of a dry run of the axis today, show you the system, how to load vessels, how it all works, what the control system's like, what moving the axis around is like. We're just using ice and water today, no material, but we are gonna be able to show you paddle movement and the whole bit.
So just so you guys know, we're going to be taking questions at the end. So if you want to pop your questions in the question section and keep them out of the comments section, that would be really helpful so we can keep those separate. But this will also be up on YouTube and Instagram afterwards, so you guys can catch it there later.
Excellent. So we've had a lot of questions. I think people really want to see, how this system works and why it's so much different than everything else out in the market. Obviously, separating the vessel is the biggest thing here, and what that really allows us to do is have continuous processing, so we can keep this machine turning, which is money for you. So as long as we have a vessel ready for agitation, then we can pick up the head, pivot, drop it into the next vessel. And so the idea there is that we're just going to have continuous processing, and we want to keep the utilization of this machine in the 90% range instead of maybe in like the 40% range if your agitation is tied to the vessel. So that was the main influence, was to keep efficiency up, as well as make the process and cleaning a lot easier. So having your vessel on the ground and being able to move that around is a huge advantage. So right now, I'm going to start by just showing you some movement of the axis here. So I've got a pneumatic control toggle lever right here and a vertical latch pin. So I can flip this up and the head will raise and latch into place. All right. So once it's up, there's a pivot release pin up here that we can pull, and we're able to swing the head around, lock it into place, and then we can go ahead and roll in another vessel. This one's empty. And as it's coming down, you can come over and just guide it into place here. And once it's in place, you can go ahead and lock your casters. And this one would be ready for agitation. So again, bring it up. Pivot over. And bring it back down. When you bring it down, you'll pull the release pin up here and then flip the toggle lever. And you also have the ability to go to a hold position on the lever. So we can bring it down, and maybe you need to make a vessel adjustment, nudge that into place, and then we go fully engaged. Okay? So there's a few safety features that are built into this, lots of safety features, but a few that will prevent the paddle from operating. And so the first thing that we're doing is when we engage a vessel, we're looking right here for a blue light, or we're looking at our light tower at the top of the control stand. And that blue light is going to indicate that we're in the safe operating position. All right? And now I'm going to explain to you what those switches are and what they do, and how to make sure that they're engaged. So we'll just take a quick peek over here at the display real quick. And we'll see that we have 3 interlock switches right here on the top, pivot locked, position low, and vessel engaged. And then right below that is a motor enable. So when all three of these are engaged, you can push the motor enable button, and we'll get a yellow light up top, as well as a yellow light showing that the motor is enabled. Now that the motor is enabled, we can actually operate the paddle. And so if you want to go over to the vessel there,
Yep.
you can see.
So, and then he's doing this by hand now, manually.
Yep, so right now I'm using the joystick, and I have control over RPM and acceleration. And right now we're limiting ourselves to 25 RPM, but this is some nice little paddle movement that we can do. And all I have to do is come up to the top of the screen here, and I can change it. Let's go to 40. And let's see what that looks like.
And remember, guys, if you have any questions at all, throw them in the questions section so we can answer them at the end for you.
Yeah, so you have up to 80 RPM available to you. Typically, your lower RPM range in the 10 to 40 or 50 is where you're going to be hash washing. So we give you the full range and speed of the motor because we want you to have full availability to do what you want. But I'll show you what 80 RPM looks like. It's a bit much and pretty aggressive. Okay.
Okay, so here's 80. Powerful.
So you can see more than you'd probably ever need, but that was the idea. So we get the full spectrum here. So again, we were just talking about interlocks and safety, and so I wanted to show you each of those three safety switches and how they work so that you understand what needs to be done to get a proper vessel engagement so that we can operate the axis machine. So again, I'm going to start by raising the head. And when I do that, my blue light goes off because I've only got one interlock satisfied, and that's the pivot. And the pivot has to be in one of two positions. So that's going to be enabled, that it's going to be satisfied when we're either here or here. But if we're anywhere in between, that switch won't be made and it won't allow the paddle to run. So as I pivot, you'll see the switch turn off. And then as I come into the other position, it turns on. Okay? So the next thing I'm going to demonstrate is the guard switch. And this is the compression of the guard. So when the guard engages a vessel, this is going to lift up about maybe a half an inch. And when it does that, it's going to engage a switch right inside this panel. And that, alone with the pivot switch, doesn't create a fully safe scenario. So we had to add one more switch. Because if you put a vessel in and it's not centered, we can still compress the guard switch, but I can get my hand in here and interface with the paddle, which we can't have. So there's a third switch that makes sure that this head is low enough that a vessel is concentric with the guard. So when we drop this in, we're going to get our blue light. And that's because we finally got low enough that we're engaging all three switches. So now I'm going to pivot back to to our wash vessel. All right. So we're fully engaged. We've got blue lights. And again, all we have to do is hit the motor enable button. We'll get a slight beep. We'll get our yellow light indicating that we are ready to roll. And we'll have live paddle movement here at the joystick. All right, so let's talk about different vessel sizes and how we can operate with different vessels. So we're going to bring this guy up, and I'm going to demonstrate how to swap a paddle. Every vessel will have a matching paddle. This is a 65-gallon vessel. We can wash up to 15,000 grams is what we comfortably say inside of this vessel. And this paddle matches the dimensions of this vessel for really good agitation and getting good turbulence in the water at lower RPMs. So that's what this paddle is designed for. And the way that we're going to take that out, if you want to come over here and get a close-up, we're going to loosen this handle up top. It's a ratcheting handle, so you can pull it out and ratchet. Then we're going to pull the pin, and it'll drop right up. Okay.
Pretty easy.
So we've got a coupler, quick connect coupler here. Now I'm going to demonstrate installing a 44-gallon paddle. They're all the same, they all install the same, but they're slightly different sizes and designs. So you're going to push up, rotate until it locks into place, push the pin through, and then clamp the lever. So the lever is just clamping to the shaft so that we don't have any movement there and we don't wear any of the components or the pin. The pin is there as a safety, and all of the torque is transmitted through the keyway. So we've got a 44-gallon paddle. Over here we've got a 44-gallon vessel. And you can see we've engaged on our second ring here in the guard. And the guard is a thermoformed PET, so it's optically clear and it's food grade. So it's really nice, you can really see what's going on inside. And now we're gonna switch to a 30, and I'll show you how simple that is. This one's got a tilt mechanism on it, which we'll talk about in just a second. All right, so you'll notice here we're engaged on the innermost ring. 30-gallon is the smallest vessel size we wash with. And if you get a nice view of the paddle inside of there, we get good coverage top to bottom, side to side. Got 2.5 inches right from the wall radially to the side of the paddle. And we'll talk next about wash liners and what we did to our vessels to make this process even better. So here we have a 30-gallon with a tilt mechanism, and the tilt mechanism can be pinned up out of the way for storage, or you can bring it down and we can essentially step on it, get some tilt, and that'll help with draining and filtration. So a nice little feature, something that's soon to come. And if you take a look at this, you can see inside our new 65s with the center drain. We've got sloped bottom here. And if you come over to this other one, you can see how that drain fitting gets treated. So we've got a 90, and then we've got a slight angle down on this guy here, but it brings your drain port right out in front, which is really convenient. In our new 65 port configurations, put your temperature probe and sight glass right in the front, fill port on the back, drain port center, and that can be oriented however you want. You can move that around. So again, I'm going to switch back, pull this paddle. And I want to show you what we did with our wash liner to keep those paddles from interfering with the wash liner during the wash. So if you want to come take a peek, you can see right in here, we've got food grade plastic dowels that are holding this thing open, just like a laundry hamper you might have seen at Target or something. And it will keep that paddle away from the wash liner. So there's one top and bottom, and when you install that wash liner, you just tuck the lower ring right along the top of the false bottom, and then you just kind of pull the slack up without lifting. You don't want to lift the bottom up of the bag, so you just kind of pull it nice and snug, and you should be ready to roll. So we'll put our 65-gallon paddle back on. So you guys can see how quickly we can go change paddles. Another thing I want to talk about is cleaning, because cleaning this is really easy. Obviously, cleaning the Bruteless vessels is a snap, and with the paddles being removable, you can clean those, soak them, throw them in a dishwasher, whatever you want. These are designed to meet the NSF standard in the food area, so they're easy to clean. And then the guard here is also really easy to clean and easy to remove. And the way that you do that is by lowering it onto a vessel. It can be an empty vessel, it can be a full vessel, it doesn't matter. Once the guard is lowered, you would remove the 3 screws here, here, and here. And then when you lift the head, the guard is going to stay on the vessel, and then you can just take it out, wipe it down, clean it, set it back on the vessel, lower the head onto the guard, and put your 3 screws back in. And then when you raise it, they'll come up together. So it makes cleanup really, really simple. That's one of my favorite features. So now I think we'll kind of show you the cable routing and how you can position the control stand within your room, and then we'll go over some of the controls itself and all the really cool features that we put into the firmware that are going to allow you to really customize your wash process and automate it. So As you can see right here, we've got this conduit. This is going to contain all the cables and a pneumatic line that runs from the control stand over to the axis. And we have extra cable that we give you and coil up in the conduit here. So you can position this control stand 10 feet from this point here to this point here, anywhere in a circle. So you should have plenty of room and flexibility to position the control stand and the axis however you want. And then you've got an adjustable cable support rope up here. And when these heights are all adjusted to their highest, it'll get you the OSHA minimum height clearance of 84 inches, but we can also bring it down for low ceiling heights. So we do have quite a bit of flexibility. This is our limiting factor right here. But this post can be lowered if you have really tight spaces. The other thing we can do for really tight spaces is we can get rid of the cross arm legs at the bottom, the T shape, and we can put a anchor base plate right here and bolt it to the ground, which can free up some space around the axis, and it can work for really, really tight pods or storage containers, and maybe they don't want to pivot, they just want to operate in one position and bolt it down and just raise and lower. We can do that. I know not everybody has a full room like this to operate in, so you do have that flexibility. On the back of the control stand is your pneumatic inlet. So this is where you're going to hook air up. 120 PSI, it really doesn't consume much air at all. CFM wise, it's pretty much negligible. You just need pressure. It's a really small air cylinder. And power is also right here. So what we like to do is run our hookups through the ceiling, and we've got power and air going right up above the control stand. Makes for a nice, easy, clean cable run. Nothing to worry about. You can just walk all around your space, and it helps for rolling vessels. You don't have anything on the ground to deal with. So let's talk pneumatics and lifting and how this thing works. So if you want to come over here. This is our air inlet, and this is the pressure that's going to control the lifting of the axis. So we set this to about 120 PSI. It's going to use that full pressure to lift. And then inside the head here, we've got another regulator knocking down the down pressure. And the reason for that is another safety concern. We don't want to have a pinch hazard between the guard and the vessel. So one thing that you'll notice is that I can easily overpower this machine and hold it back from moving. So the forces we're dealing with are really low. And the reason that they are that way is because we've got a gas spring right here that's doing all the work. So this is a big version of what's on the trunk of your car. And this guy is holding the head up. It also allows you to disconnect air pressure. And this thing isn't going to drop on you. So I can move it up and down, and it's relatively neutral. And the reason it's neutral is because this guy is doing a lot of the work. So you do have control over the speed up and down with these guys right here. And again, we have pressure control over the up and the down individually. And it really gives you nice smooth action. We can have a variety of different paddle sizes, and it all works together really quite nicely. One of the other things you'll notice here are vessel tags, and we will number the vessels here because let's say you've got 4 of these 65-gallon vessels that you're rotating through. Well, you're going to want to keep track of that, and our firmware can help you do that. So just a simple vessel tag with a number on it, and I'll show you in the firmware a little bit later on how that's going to be applicable. So why don't we go over to the control stand. I'm going to engage the vessel. When you're engaging the vessel, Best practices, you'll see me do this all the time. Just go over and wiggle the guard. Make sure it's fully seated. Give this guy a nudge down or grab the handle and pull it down. And that's just going to make sure everything is fully seated. Then we're going to come over and press our motor enable button right here. Okay? And when we hear that beep and we see the light, we know that we're live and we're ready to go. So let's get a good angle here with no glare if we can. Looks good. So I'm going to show you, this is the home screen. We've already kind of talked about top right corner, and we are going to go over kind of the different features here and how to wash hash with the axis. So the big thing that you need to understand and learn is that we have patterns and recipes, and a pattern is a short 30-second recording of motor movement that's intended to be looped over and over for a specific amount of time, and a recipe is a pattern or a combination of patterns and how long you're utilizing those. So we have two different ways to make a pattern here. We can do a joystick pattern using this guy, or we can do a table pattern where you just program the motor movement directly. So let's start with a joystick pattern. And you'll notice the first thing is this big red arrow, and it says adjust RPM and ramp before recording. So we need to set our joystick settings. And right now I'm set to 25 RPM max, meaning when I throw the joystick all the way to one direction or the other, we're going to have 25 RPM. And the ramp is slow. And the slow ramp means that it's going to take a long time to do direction changes, whereas a medium ramp will be faster, and then there's a fast ramp. And the fast ramp will be almost instantaneous direction changes, about maybe 100 milliseconds, okay? So, actually I think it's 200 milliseconds. So here we go. We're gonna go with 25 and slow, and I'm gonna hit record. And it's gonna show me right up top, I've got 30 seconds to record because, again, this is a motor movement that's intended to be looped. And as soon as I start moving the joystick, we're gonna start recording. Stop. And when I do that, you'll see right here a graph that's going to show you that motor movement with clockwise on top, counterclockwise below, and then the amplitude representing the RPM. And we were at 25, so that's why they're all peaked out at the same thing. And then this whole width here would represent 30 seconds, and I only did about 24 seconds, so we're right there. And I can save that out. So I'm going to hit save. I'll put it right here in the first slot, and I can change the name of that to IG Live. And then I can go home and we will show you how to make a table pattern. So a table pattern is quite simple. You go into a table pattern, and now we're giving directions to the motor for RPM and direction. So this is a 4-stage right here, so if I select it, I can change the RPM. I could say 12 RPM if I wanted, and I can change the direction from clockwise to counterclockwise, or I can do a dwell, which is just a resting period. We can give it a time. Say I want to do 2 seconds. And I'm going to save this out. If I wanted to add a stage, I could click the stage button. This is just like the press. So let's see. Clockwise, counterclockwise, we'll do 1 second. Again, we get a graph, which I didn't show you. The graph will show you right here what that's going to look like. Okay. So I'm going to go back home. We now programmed a joystick pattern and a table pattern. And if I want to just quickly use a pattern without a recipe, you go to Quick Wash. And now this is a list, a DJ mixing table, if you will, for your patterns. So there's our IG Live pattern we just made. If I hit that, we're going to start washing with that pattern. And it's going to run this indefinitely until I either press that same button, and at that point it will go to a dwell, or I can just select another pattern. Let's go find the other one we did. Right here. I'm going to select that, and we instantly switched over to this pattern. So this is the table pattern we made. And you can see it's a little jumpier, and that is because it's digital pattern, right? So I would say an analog pattern is like a joystick pattern, and a digital pattern is a table pattern. So you can kind of think of like if you want smooth, fluid movements, you can do that with the joystick. And if you really want those direct movements that you program, you have that ability as well. So we'll come back over here. Let's say maybe I want to go back to that first one for a little while. And if I push this pattern again, I'm going to get a dwell. So maybe we want to put a resting period in at the end of our wash, but we don't want our alarm to go off yet. So we can program some of that resting time in. And now I'm going to hit stop. And when I do that, you'll see on the screen, this is exactly what I did with my quick wash. And of course, we can save it as a recipe. And I'm going to save it right here. Save last wash. I'll name this one IG Live. Can't spell. And we'll call it wash 1. Boom. Now, all I have to do to replay that recipe is select it from the recipes screen. So this is our home screen, recipes, IG Live, run. If I hit start, it's going to start playing. I also have the ability to input batch information, and this will log all this information into a history section, so at the end of the day, you know what you did. So we'll skip that for now, but we're just going to hit start. So again, we're just washing right now. We're running our recipe, and you can see up here, we've got a green light. It's kind of hard to show up on the phone, but up top here on the light tower, we've got green, which is indicating that the recipe is running. And so when your recipe's finished, this is gonna stop, this is gonna turn off. And if we look at our screen here, we also have options similar to the press. We can skip to the next pattern early, or we can extend a pattern. If I hit extend, then we're gonna stay here indefinitely and we'll just keep running, and the counter is counting up, obviously. So when I'm ready, I can hit next. And now we're doing our dwell, which is our final resting period. Maybe you don't want to program that in there, totally up to you. And we've got 10 seconds left on our dwell. When that finishes, we're going to get a beep indicating that the recipe is complete. And if we look up here, our light went out. So we know that we've completed. And we also get a message up top that says that we modified our recipe. And that's because I was showing you the next stage and the extend stage buttons. So if I wanted to, I could save over my last wash and do that. Let's go over some of the other features here in the firmware. So we know how to do a joystick pattern, a table pattern. We know that we can go to quick wash to select a pattern and just start washing with it right away. We know that we can program a recipe, and the way that we can do that is with a quick wash. Or we can go in, this is the one that we just did, I can hit edit, and I can, of course, change which pattern is used and the amount of time it's used for. Let's say that was 19 seconds. I want 2 minutes. Save. All right, so we can edit recipes. Let's look at history. So history for me is pretty blank on this page because I haven't been doing a good job of filling out my batch information. But this is going to give you your vessel number, volume, which is the size of the vessel, how many grams, the batch ID, the recipe that number you washed with, the wash time, and then you'll have a time and date because all the production machines have an internal clock with a battery to keep track of time and date, so all this is logged. So I'm going to show you how to utilize this feature. So I'm going to select this recipe and hit run, but now I'm going to input my batch information. And let's say that our batch information is IG123, weight, we're washing 15,000 grams today, vessel number 1, and it's a 65. Okay, so when I hit start, we're going to go into our wash process as normal, and if I go to my history later, it's going to show me this recipe that I ran, for how long that recipe ran, what time, and it's going to give me all of that information as well. And so what we like to do, and what we like to recommend, is that on your first wash of a batch, fill out all of this information, okay? And then on a subsequent wash, maybe you just put the vessel number in. And that way you can tell what is a first wash and what is subsequent washes. You already know which recipe number you're washing with. So anybody could come back from break when this thing's been running, look at the history screen right here. And look, we can see exactly what I did. I was only running it for 46 seconds. Again, this machine doesn't have time and date on it, but yours will. So you can see everything right here, and it's going to go top to bottom, and we've got multiple pages. So you should be able to get through a full shift, if not multiple days, with all this information here. Now we'll go into the one last section, the system settings. We can turn our buzzer off or on. We have an auxiliary timer, which I haven't talked about, which is right here. It's available everywhere on every screen pretty much. And you can set this thing for whatever time you want. And it's gonna just give you, let's say you're gonna go do something else and you need a timer for whatever it is, it's there, you can use it. You can turn it off and on. Recording, password protected ability to disable recording, which means you can train employees and not worry about overriding recipes. And then statistics up here is not really that useful or interesting, but it'll show you your motor run hours, cycles, that kind of thing, okay? And set date and time is pretty obvious. Maintenance schedule, I'll talk about. So this thing is kind of like your car. So let's say you're operating, you're running along, and you'll notice on the home screen your system setting button turns red, okay? And you're gonna click on that, and the maintenance schedule button will be red as well. So you'll click on that, and then one of these 3 items or more will be red, saying that service is due. So belt tension is our most common thing that we check for, and every 3 weeks or so we want to be checking our belt tension to make sure that we haven't loosened up. And we're going to select it, and we can reset the reminder. When it's red, this will be red. You can reset it, or you can change the schedule. Let's say you guys want to check your belt tension. Maybe your process is once a week. So you just put 40 hours in, and look, I've got 39 hours remaining until that's due. And if I reset, it should say 40. I'll change it back to 120, and we're good to go. So the other one is lubricate and torque. The hinges and a few other things need to be greased once every 6 months or every 2,500 wash cycles. It's pretty minimal, but this will remind you so you don't even have to think about it. And then we get to bearing and drivetrain service, which is a big question lots of people have, is how long is this thing gonna last? And the answer is a pretty dang long time. So right now, we're setting the initial major service interval to 20,000 hours from the factory. And 20,000 hours is going to be about 10 years based on a 40-hour work week. So that is quite a bit of runtime before you need to do any service. And you will have 3 options for doing your major maintenance on this thing. So let's go back to the axis here. And you'll notice up top here in the front, this is what we call our paddle drive assembly. Everything's hidden under sheet metal. But this assembly is able to move and tension the belt, which is right under the cover here. So you can essentially take that whole assembly off. You can also come back here, and this is where the motor gearbox live, and that's all in one assembly, and you can remove that. And option number 1 is the most expensive, but it would provide you with the quickest and the least amount of downtime, would be to have these items on your shelf, and when you're ready to do a service, you swap them out. There are machine parts in there that absolutely do not need to be replaced, but you would be doing so just out of convenience. The next option you'd have is you're keeping an eye on your service, and you communicate with us that you want to do it on such and such a date. So you pull these items out and you next day air freight them to us, and we rebuild them with new components, send it back to you. Maybe 3 days of downtime, 3 or 4 days of downtime, and saves you some money there. The third and final option would be the very cheapest option, and we just send you parts. We'd send you bearings, belt, coupler, motor and gearbox, and you would rebuild the assembly yourself. Might take a mechanic about 6 hours to do so, and that's going to be your absolute cheapest option. I don't have a price on that quite yet, but I can tell you it's really a fraction of the full purchase price. So you do have options for when you need to do that maintenance, but it should be quite a while from now. We're mostly just going to be doing routine checkups and making sure, again, belt tension is your biggest thing that you're looking for on this machine. If your belt tension drops, you might start to hear it skip, which if you kept running it like that, you could damage a belt and you'd have to replace the belt. Not a big deal, but it can be easily avoided. If you over tension the belt, that's when you start to eat up your bearing life. So we do have an instrument that makes it really simple. You literally hold this thing up to the belt and pluck it like a guitar string, and it'll measure the frequency that it's vibrating at. And we have a target frequency that we're trying to hit. So again, just a couple of screws on the end of the head to adjust that tension if needed, but usually you're just checking it and not having to adjust it all that often. So I think now we've gone over the system in pretty good detail, and I think we could probably start taking some questions and seeing what we can do.
All right.
So let's see here. Does it come with spare belts? No, it does not. And again, the reason not is because it should last you 20,000 hours. So not something that you should have to have on hand, but we do have those on hand, so that's good. We talked about how long does the motor last? How do you take it apart to clean? How do you clean rivets and crevices? So we talked about cleaning a little bit. This is all stainless. This can all be wiped down. The whole thing is actually IP65 rated, so it can technically be doused from head to toe with water and cleaned. No pressure washers. It's not rated for that. That's not IP65. But you can easily pop the guard off and clean it. The vessels are easy to clean. Everything wipes down. And like I said, you can spray it all down. So that's really nice. How do the components fare at 32 degrees Fahrenheit? Yeah, shouldn't have any issues. Everything is really rated to run from freezing, below freezing to, well, all the way up to about maybe like a 95-degree room. And I'm not sure why you'd want to wash hash in a 95-degree room, but you can do so. When it comes to testing, one of the things that we did, this machine is built to this UL 763 standard, and part of that was testing all the mechanisms for 100,000 cycles. So this actual 100,000 simulated cycles already, and this is also the one we do all our demos on. So reliability is extremely good. We haven't had to replace anything. We're just happily running along here. Let's see, what else we got? Can you export data from Axis to a laptop? Yes, you may. So we have our Pressware Connect software, which is both Windows and Mac software, and that is currently used right now on the presses pretty much exclusively for firmware updates, but now that we have the Axis, you can do firmware updates on this guy. You can also export patterns and recipes to back things up, and we will have a way to send you presets that you can load in using that software. And we have a separate area of the memory saved for those type of things. So as new types of recipes and strategies come out, we can share those with you guys.
Okay.
So what's different with the Axis compared to impeller washers? Lots of things. So an impeller washer, I'm going to be generic here, is generally an impeller is like a much smaller blade, typically at the bottom of the vessel. And what it's designed to do is really get water moving in a vortex, and it does that by spinning at a higher RPM, and it starts to move the water that touches the impeller, which moves the water touching it, and slowly builds up a vortex. And there's a lot of wash vessels, or I guess I should say automated agitation systems out there that utilize maybe the shape of the vessel and the vortex. And this is a totally different way about going about it. So for one, with those impellers, they're really high RPM typically, so we're moving the material a lot. And with this, we have full capability and control. I'm going to show you our minimum RPM right now, which is 2. And I'm even going to put it on a fast ramp so you can see. Why don't you go over? Mm-hmm. That's our absolute minimum speed. And then, of course, this is our max speed. So we have the full spectrum here that we can deal with, and what this allows us to do is to really take this paddle and create agitation, create turbulence within there from above. So we're not taking those trichomes that are trying to settle and whipping them back up to the top. We're agitating from above, and we're allowing things to kind of drift as that happens. Also with these new wash liners, they stand off the vessel by about 3/4 of an inch. So we're finding lots and lots of trichomes working their way, getting pushed out through the liner and then falling down through the sides here and into the cavity below the false bottom where they're protected. So that benefit of this wash liner and vessel combination, in combination with the paddle movement, we're able to recreate those paddle movements that you get with hand paddling. And what we found is that we just have a really efficient system here, that we're able to separate trichome heads faster than we are with hand paddling, and we're getting a really high quality. The quality hasn't changed at all. So yeah, that's kind of biggest differences there.
Just so you know, we have about 7 minutes left, so we'll take a few more questions.
All right.
So maybe patterns and recipes.
All right, let's see. What was that question?
How many patterns and recipes can you save?
How many patterns and recipes can you save? So the answer to that is you get 20 joystick patterns, you get 20 table patterns, and then we have a separate bank for us to send presets to you. And then when it comes to recipes, you get 40 custom recipes, and then we have a separate bank. So you have the ability to customize 40 recipes and 40 patterns. And the reason we give you so many is so that you can really create multiple washes for multiple batch sizes and be strain specific if you want to, and you should have enough to do that. All right. Okay, so this person's interested in the system but is in a wheelchair, curious about how to do this. I would say is definitely, you would want help setting it up. Might have some issues reaching one of these pins, but we are more than willing to accommodate. So if you're interested in a machine, we could help do some modifications here to make this a little more wheelchair friendly. All right, let's see. All right, so talking about settling and draining and stuff like that. So one of the reasons that I really like the 65-gallon vessel is that it's wide and short, and so that gives you a bigger surface area and a shorter distance that trichomes have to settle. But again, one of the very benefits of this machine is that all of these processes about filling, chilling, soaking, settling, draining, filtering, and refilling are all able to happen offline. So we can keep this machine running continuously, and I would say that's where we're gaining the most efficiency. Let's see. Yeah, so after washing, we would hook up the hash pump, and our hash pump will pull the water out with the trichome rich water, pull it out, and we'll put it into our filter bags and collect the hash, and then we'll pump that water directly back into the vessel. So your only downtime really is how long does it take your hash bags offline again. So yep, we have a question about paddle types. We can show those one more time. This is a 65. And you can see how that fits. This is a 44. And that goes in this vessel here. And then we have a 30. Right here. Does it come in black? No. But you could spray paint it, although I don't recommend that. So I think that's probably about it for today, guys. If you guys had a question that we didn't get to, shoot us an email.
Yeah, you can get our DMs too. We'll get your questions answered. And this will also be up on YouTube and Instagram today or within the next few days. So you can find it there.
Thank you guys for taking the time. I'm going to set this in and run it again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.